In the HBO series Boardwalk Empire, which is set during the Prohibition era, Arnold Rothstein tells them they could buy booze from Brooklyn. Lucky mentions Bill Lovett and Peg Leg Lonergan.
Well, you could always buy from Brooklyn.
It's Bill Lovett. Peg Leg Lonergan.
Those patties won't sell to Italians.
While Frankie Yale says those Irish won't sell to Italians. Lanigan grew up in a large Irish-American family connected to the Brooklyn waterfront. His father, John Lanigan, was known as a prizefighter and was involved with the underworld of the period. Richard lost part of his right leg in a trolley car accident when he was a child. The injury left him dependent on a prosthetic leg and eventually gave him the nickname Peg Leg. By the early 1920s, Lanigan had become involved with the gangs operating around Brooklyn's waterfront. The White Hand Gang was not necessarily one single organization in a modern sense. It was a collection of Irish-American gangs and waterfront groups that fought to maintain control of the docks against growing competition from Italian criminal organizations. One of the most important leaders was William Wild Bill Lovett. Lovett had served in the United States Army during World War I and was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his service. After returning to Brooklyn, he became involved in the waterfront rackets and eventually emerged as one of the leading figures of the White Hand Gang. Richard Lanigan became one of Lovett's important associates. The two men were also connected through Lanigan's sister, Anna. In 1923, Anna married Bill Lovett, but that same year, the Lanigan family was involved in another violent episode. In May 1923, Richard Lanigan's mother, Mary, shot and took out her husband, John Lanigan, at the family's bicycle shop on Bridge Street. According to the contemporary newspaper reports, Mary was later acquitted of her husband's demise. Richard himself was also arrested in May 1923 during a police raid connected to a series of gang whackings in Brooklyn. Bill Lovett and Richard Lanigan were among the men held in connection with the demise of James Martin. The charges did not end their careers. Later that year, Bill Lovett was whacked. On November 1st, 1923, Lovett was found dead in the rear of his store at 25 Bridge Street. His skull was crushed and he suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Police investigated the killing as part of the continuing gang war on the Brooklyn waterfront. Despite later stories identifying particular Italian gunmen as Lovett's killers, the exact circumstances and identity of the killer were never conclusively established. After Lovett's death, Richard Lanigan emerged as the leading figure of the White Hand Gang. Lanigan inherited a weakened organization. The waterfront was changing rapidly. Prohibition had created enormous profits from illegal alcohol, while Italian and Jewish criminal organizations were becoming increasingly powerful. Lanigan attempted to maintain the White Hand Gang's influence over the docks while expanding its involvement in bootlegging. At the same time, he became involved in an increasingly violent struggle with Italian-American gangsters competing for control over the Brooklyn waterfront. One of his biggest rivals was Frankie Yale. The conflict was not simply about ethnicity. It was also about control of the waterfront labor, gambling, protection rackets, bootlegging, and other criminal businesses. But Peg Leg Lonergan was notorious for his hostility toward Italian Americans. Police and later accounts described him as a violent gang leader who was involved in numerous clippings and who sometimes led attacks against Italian gangsters in waterfront saloons and bars. The violence continued throughout 1924 and 1925. Peg Leg Lonergan's organization also suffered from internal instability. Men within the waterfront gangs fought over money, territory, and leadership, while rival groups attempted to take control of the docks. One of the men connected to the Lanigan organization was Matty Martin. Martin later married Anna Lanigan, making him connected to both Bill Lovett and Richard Lanigan through marriage. By 1925, the White Hand Gang was fighting for survival. And then came Christmas night. On December 25, 1925, Richard Lanigan and 5 other men entered the Adonis Social Club, a South Brooklyn club located at 20th Street. The group included Cornelius Needles Ferry, Aaron Harms, James Hart, Patrick Maloney, and Joseph Howard. According to the contemporary police investigation, Lanigan and his men were inside the club when a shooting suddenly broke out. The lights reportedly went out and gunfire followed. When the shooting was over, Richard Lanigan and 2 of his associates were dead. Lanigan and Aaron Harms were found inside the club while Cornelius Ferry was found outside. James Hart was discovered wounded and was taken to Cumberland Street Hospital. The police immediately began questioning people connected to the club. Several men were arrested or detained, including members of Lanigan's group and people associated with the Adonis Social Club. One of the most famous names taken into custody was Al Capone, who was visiting New York from Chicago. Capone was questioned in connection with the killings, but there was not enough evidence to charge him. The investigation produced no definitive prosecution for the killings of Lanigan, Harms, and Ferry. The reason for the shooting remains uncertain. Police believe the killings were connected to the ongoing waterfront gang war, but witnesses were unwilling to provide a clear account of what happened. Richard Peg Leg Lonergan died on December 26, 1925. He was 25 years old. His death effectively ended the era of the White Hand Gang as a major force on the Brooklyn waterfront. The organization had survived Dinny Meehan, Bill Lovett, and years of internal warfare. But after Lanigan was killed, there was no leader capable of restoring its power. Within the following years, Italian-American criminal organizations gained increasing control over the Brooklyn waterfront. The White Hand Gang disappeared. Richard Peg Leg Lonergan's career had only lasted a few years, but his name became permanently connected to the violent struggle for control of Brooklyn's waterfront during the last final years of the old Irish gangs. And his death at the Adonis Social Club on Christmas night in 1925 marked one of the final chapters of the White Hand Gang.